All right. Welcome everybody on the spring weekend, and welcome to the Sniper Show, where I'm going to take aim at the people to whom VBC has entrusted the responsibility and privilege to lead our national teams. I'm here to help our viewers learn more about these fine people, and I'll be doing my best to dig deep into their histories and get to know what makes them really unique. Let's start with introductions. So today, for the junior national team, we have Mike O'Reilly and Lindsay Wingham. Say hi. For the U24 national program, we have the Menard twins, Aiden and Seamus.
Hello.
There you go. And then finally, for the premier program, one is my longtime boss, and the other one is a good friend who sometimes feels like my boss, Matt Smith and Wendy Zhou. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Okay. Now, I just want to warn everybody that if you notice that my picture doesn't sync up with the sound, that's just some hardware issues I'm having. I promise you that at least everything you hear will be perfectly synced, so no worries on that level. Okay, and just as a FYI to everybody, to all of our guests, please make sure that you are on mute so that we can just focus on our program directors. And I will be keeping an eye on the chat room. So if ever you do have something that you want to throw out there, please go ahead. I can't promise that I will be able to get to everything that will be put in there, but I will definitely be keeping an eye on what goes through. All right. And just a double check, if everybody's able to see the screen I'm sharing, the Sniper Show, right? Perfect. So actually, you know what? No, before we get there, general question, okay? Program directors, let's get to know you guys outside of Dragonboat. So if you do have a career outside of Dragonboat, what is it? Or if you don't, what would it have been in a parallel universe? Let's start with Matt.
I don't have a career outside Dragonboat, but I did have one way back when. I am an electrical engineer who only worked in the industry for a couple of years before deciding that Dragonboat was way more fun. So that's my story. But nowadays I use my skills to fixing trailer lights. So it has come in handy.
And why electrical engineering and not your original passion of astrophysics?
Yeah, I don't know what the careers are in astrophysics. You're right. You dug that one out. That was something I definitely wanted to go into, but you know, the job market wasn't too high in that area.
All right, let's continue with Wendy. Wendy, what do you? I know you have a career outside of Dragonboat. What do you do?
So kind of like Matt, I did my education also in electrical engineering, and I'm still in electrical engineering. I'm doing research management at the University of Toronto in still the engineering field. And I'm also working part-time as a policy program manager for the Canadian Science Policy Centre. So I have a combination of a science and policy background outside of Dragonboat, and kind of looking to get into the policy field.
Let's move on to Mike and Lindsay.
So I'm a social worker. I started my career as a therapist with children, and then eventually in prisons. The two don't align. But now I'm a vice president of something called Ontario Health, which oversees our healthcare system. And so in Toronto, I oversee both COVID response and vaccine delivery. So a lot of fun work for the past year.
So you have not been totally busy.
No.
At all.
No. No.
And what about Mike?
As of right now, I decided to go back to school in September. With everything going on and the lockdown, I thought it'd be a good time to go back to school. So I'm currently working on a diploma in social service work.
Ooh, interesting. And finally, let's go on to Aiden and Seamus. Let's start with Aiden, alphabetical order.
All right, I'm a fresh grad, kind of funny, under 24 coaching the team. I just aged out of under 24, but just finished my bachelor's in kinesiology and then my master's in business management. And I just started a job recently at the Provincial Health Services Authority. So also health authorities, but I'm a project coordinator there. So it's been about 3 months now and yeah, having a good time.
Wonderful. And Seamus?
In natural twin-like fashion, we we both did kinesiology undergrad and graduated at the same time, and I'm doing master's of business management right now. So I'm going through like pretty much the same program that Aiden did.
Wow.
Yeah, looking at different types of careers, trying to do something different, but you know, we'll see. Our experiences and interests line up a lot, so
Okay.
But I'm definitely considering electrical engineering now. Seems like a popular choice.
Natural choice. Natural. Let's move on to something a little bit more personalized. And I want to start with Wendy and a story that not many people, right? I don't think many people know outside of 22 Dragons. And in fact, I'm not sure if the other person involved in the story is even aware of it. So this is going to be interesting. Okay. So I pulled this picture specifically because I believe this is the last year that Wendy Jo is in Montreal. If you can't find her, there she is. Okay. And this is back in the days where the 22 Dragons Open team had nicknames written on their backs. Wendy, do you remember what your nickname is? And how did you get that? What's the story behind how you ended up with that nickname?
I do remember that nickname, and I have mild bitterness toward it. So the nickname I had was Useless. And the background behind that nickname stems from a Hong Kong 2012 club cruise, where that was my first world experience. And Matt and I had gone to a IDBF meeting, pre-race meeting, to go over like rules and like the race regulations and things like that. And that was my first time going. So I thought this was like real serious business. And Matt, to my surprise, because Matt is this like big shot president of Dragonboat Canada, head of the club, really didn't seem to know what was going on. He didn't know where the meeting was. He didn't know how to get to the meeting. I don't think he knew how to take the metro system. He didn't know how to tell the taxi driver where to go. And at one point he was dying of dehydration and didn't have money for water. And I got a little impatient with him and complained that he was just useless. And then Matt Smith is useless just became a thing, like an inside joke at the club. And that kind of like related to my nickname, but they decided that Matt Smith is useless was too long and they just made it useless. And so it backfired onto me so that, you know, it could be Matt's revenge.
Matt, do you have anything to say in defense?
I feel the years have embellished that story a little bit. Although I will give credit to Wendy for helping me navigate that first experience in Hong Kong.
Actually, let's continue with you, Matt. So my first question for you is, do you regret not being able to pull off this look anymore?
That's well, you really pulled that one out. Yeah, you know what? I've been sporting the same hairdo for sadly 25 years now. But yeah, those were the golden years. But down to my chin and past it.
Actually, more seriously, and we will talk about like something after you started your the new hairdo. So, do you know where I pulled this picture from?
I believe that looks like Days In 1999 in Sam Shui.
Mm-hmm. What do you remember from those days? Because I don't think many people know the Days In story.
So this was my first or second big international event, and the first time I think a lot of us from Canada saw what the real world of dragon boating was inside China. and we got invited to this event. Our sponsor had a connection, and we had a team of exceptional paddlers go over there. We raced, I think the crowd was between 250 and 3,000 people who came out to watch the race. We needed to, security escorts, and we ended up winning the race, and needed the army to protect us from the crowd after. And people were coming up and shaking the bus and just wanted to touch us. It was a pretty surreal experience. And we were the stars of the town. And then, we came home, and there was one reporter from the local Chinese newspaper there at the airport to meet us, and we all kind of went back to our regular lives. But
that contrast is sort of hurts a little bit, I guess. But I would like to hope. I would like to believe that if something that big happened these days, that we might get a little bit more attention, because you guys beat like the Chinese army team or something like that, right?
We did, and what was interesting, we had a lot of, at the time, we had a lot of canoeists on the team, even some of the Olympic guys, and the big thing in dragon boating in the late 90s in Hong Kong was finishing your race by standing up. So the crews would get up on their feet at the end to kind of thinking they could get extra leverage and get a finishing kick. So we asked them, if you're allowed to stand, are you allowed to kneel? And so throughout the heats and the semifinals, we stayed seated, and it was all very competitive. The Chinese team was exceptional. But then at the end of the race, in the final, right before the start, we all got up on our knees, and we waited to the final because we didn't want the officials to change the rules on us halfway through. And as soon as we got on our knees, it's certainly a more powerful paddling position. And we ended up winning by, I can't remember the time, but it was at least 10 to 15 seconds. Something that completely shocked the crowd and shocked the host nation and shocked just about everyone.
Absolutely ridiculous. And I wish I could spend more time speaking about this, but we do have other people. As a side note to all of our viewers, this picture is the happiest you will see Smith for the remainder of this conversation. Let's move on to Mike. And give me a second. Do you remember this picture?
I do.
I need to note, so for people who might not know where to look, this over here is Mike O'Reilly. And for the little flex, I need to say, I am also part of this picture. I am not looking in the boat. Yes, that is true. But the defense is that we have crossed the finish line, so it's okay. And we won. Mike, what do you remember from racing in 2009 in Prague, Rashice?
There were lots of things I remember. One of which would be getting ID'd for not being under 23. Because of the gray hair, which you can see from the photo.
I will actually refer back to that later on today.
Shocking.
Do you remember?
I remember this race as well.
Yeah, no, this was spectacular.
It was. It was a combined time for 3 races. The first 2, which we lost we were behind by about 2 seconds. Mm-hmm. So going into this last race, we had to win by more than 2 seconds to get the gold medal. And I do remember crossing the finish line pretty much right there and looking across and going, by eyeballing it, that's about 2 seconds. So it's going to be very close. And they had a big Jumbotron off to the side that would post times. Mm-hmm. And we were on the dock when they posted, I believe it was like 2.2 seconds we won by, which gave us our first gold medal at the World Championships.
So I need to correct you. We had already won the 200-meter mixed gold.
Had we?
I think so. I'm pretty sure we did. But I do agree that this gold felt a million times better.
Yes, I do agree with that.
Just because the like having to come from behind just made it so much better. Awesome. One last thing. Do you remember doing a 2K straight into lightning?
Yes, I do remember us sitting on the water for about 20 minutes while they debated whether or not it was safe or not. And we all thought it was not going to happen. And then they were like, okay, we're starting now.
It's just the U2 Force anyways.
Yeah.
Oh, good times. Good times.
Well,
Let's move on to what I believe is the first time that not the first time that I meet the twins, but the first time that I'm made aware of the twins. So, Aiden and Seamus. I actually don't remember how I ended up finding this article, but this is an article from one of the Vancouver newspapers. Let's start with this. Do you guys remember who's in front and who's in back?
Of course we do. That's me in the front.
Indeed. How did you guys discover Dragonboat? Because it mentioned how you guys joined your own high school team before you joined the Eric Hamber team. That is better known. So how did you discover Dragonboat within your local team? Your local.
I wish I had a better response for this, but our mom forced us to it.
Yeah, we actually really hated paddling for the first 2 years. Yeah, for some reason it just didn't click with us. I think our teammates were more recreational in their mindset, and we were more competitive, so it was pretty frustrating. Yeah, and then as soon as we hopped over to Eric Hamber, then everything was just so much better. Then we fell in love with the sport.
Okay, like being with other people that were like-minded in their competitiveness.
Yeah, exactly.
Back to, let's stop the share for 2 seconds. Back onto something a little bit more generalized. So this is going to be a question for everybody. Let's start with Wendy. What would you call your I'm going to give you the choice between either naming your last guilty pleasure. Okay, so either a movie, a TV show, or something along those lines, or your greatest extravagance, just so we can get to know what kind of things tickles Wendy's fancy.
My greatest recent extravagance. So right before this meeting, about half an hour ago, I just got back from picking up a bunch of weights that I had ordered over Boxing Day. So they're only 3 months late. But I have a whole power rack, a bar, a bunch of plates, and a bench. And they're still in boxes right now because I just shoved them into my garage before this. But I'm very excited to use them. In true Wendy fashion, I'm very cheap. So I did do my best to try and find as many good deals as possible. So they're probably cheaper than maybe a lot of people would have spent. But it's like a bit over $1,000. And that's probably the biggest single, even though it's a group purchase, of items that I got in a long time.
Very, very cool. Mike, Lindsay, trying to figure out what to answer.
Yeah, I have been working a lot, so probably not a lot of extravagance lately, but my guilty pleasure is I watched and continue to watch everything from the 90 Day Fiance series. So I spend my time doing my free time with that.
And Mike?
I will kind of similarly go along the same path of guilty pleasure. I do enjoy watching The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. So that'll be.
I'm sure Matt Smith shares this, right?
Yeah, I'm not really into The Bachelor, but I will admit, after a day of dealing with athletes and events and so on, a glass of scotch and going back to my nerd roots and watching Star Trek is probably my happiest place.
Do you stick to the old series, or are you okay with watching something more like Enterprise?
You know, I definitely have an opinion on all of them. The Next Generation is the gold standard, though, and Picard is excellent as well.
Best haircut. And let's go with Seamus because I started with Aiden last time.
What's my guilty pleasure?
Mm-hmm. Or your greatest extravagance. I let you choose.
I don't know if I have any crazy extravagance. No, I think last night I started watching The Wolf of Wall Street. That was my most recent guilty pleasure. But I started about midnight and I realized it's a 3-hour movie, so that did not finish. Poor planning. But.
And Aiden?
Yeah, I don't know about Seamus's answer. We recently bought a car. I'd say that's pretty big guilty pleasure when we really don't need one. It's just for camping trips.
Okay.
Yeah, we bought that like a week ago. And like a few weeks before that, I bought a motorcycle. So I would say I'm kind of broke right now.
Having both, I will accept as an interpretation of extravagance. So or guilty pleasure. So good answer. Good answer. All right. Let's go back to the PowerPoint and we move on. Mike, I said that I promise you guys I do good research. This is a screenshot straight from Mike O'Reilly's Facebook. Okay, so I need to ask, please rank these 3 movie scenes in order of how much feels they cause for you. Okay. So the first scene is finding out that Jack did not survive.
I mean,
Number 2, Ali remembering and then subsequently forgetting Noah. Okay. Or finding out that Jamie is sick.
I mean, number 1 is definitely A Walk to Remember. I mean, that's definitely probably one of my top 10 movies. It's a great movie. I guess Leo dying would be number 2.
Oh, so we're putting Notebook at the 3rd?
Yeah.
No, like no explanation whatsoever. It's just.
I mean, it's just the third. It's the third best movie there. That's what it is. Walk to Remember 1, Titanic 2, Notebook 3.
All right. Since we're ranking different things and reorganizing stuff and going down into people's memories, we're gonna. I want to do the same thing with Wendy, but Wendy has a different set of things that she really enjoys. She is a big fan of taking pictures of food, like any good little Asian girl. So my quiz for you, Wendy, do you remember what these are and where were they taken?
I remember some of them, not all of them, and I think I only remember half of them, which are the 2 on the left.
Okay.
The bottom left one. So a little bit of background behind this. I love food, and especially when traveling, the best thing I like to do is to do a ton of research on the regional specialties of the area that I'm going to visit. So not just the country, but the regional specialties. And the bottom left picture, the pizza, was from the last local regatta that we ever, probably most of us, raced in, which was Regina Nationals in 2019. And a fun fact is that a Regina specialty is a Regina style pizza. So that's a Regina style pizza. The top left photo is Hot Pot. Mm-hmm. And that I think was from when we went to Chongqing World Cup in 2018. And a little bit of a funny story behind that was there was a reporter. I think CTV was organizing the whole World Cup, and a reporter had taken a member of each of the teams out for kind of an interview talk show thing. And I wasn't able to go because we had practice and Tony had went, and I was the most jealous. Chongqing is famous for their hot pot, and I was basically depressed the entire time because I really wanted to go. And Tony talked to him because he felt so bad for me. And he invited a few of us out on the last night to go for hot pot. So he took us out for hot pot. Nice. And I had dragged Adrian out to come with us. And little did he know there was drinking involved, and Adrian can't handle his alcohol. So he spent the entire dinner sitting next to me whispering, "I'm going to kill you."
All right. I'm going to help you out with the 2 others. On the top, let's go back to the share screen. Top right is a pulled pork sandwich you found in Providence, Rhode Island during one of your few non-Dragonboat related travels. And bottom right is cheese balls from a Burger King in Budapest.
Ah, yes.
All right.
So Budapest was great because going to different fast food restaurants, McDonald's, Burger King, KFC in different countries, they all have like these, regional specialties or things you can only get in that country. So going to fast food restaurants is actually super fun and trying those out. And then Rhode Island was just like a fun experience that I had gone to during my PhD as for a conference.
Mm-hmm.
So trying that out was nice.
Wonderful. All right. Now, as everybody can tell, this is a pretty old picture. This is the Wong's Dragonboat Club, and this is the Dragon Slayers, this very, very, very strong team from the early 2000s in the Montreal area. This picture, I believe, is either from when they qualified in 2001 to be able to go to Rome, Club Cruise, or this is in 2002, and this picture is in Rome. Now, as you can see, there's plenty of happiness. Case in point, John Hutchison, for the few of you who know who that is smiling, and we generally joke about the fact that he never smiles. So this picture has enough happiness that John smiles, and yet Matt isn't. Matt, why?
Yeah, this is, I've been made fun of for this picture quite a bit. I honestly don't know what was going through my mind at the time. This was in 2003.
Oh,
okay, 17 years ago. Or 2001, I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, it just must have been a long day, I guess. Who knows?
Okay, so something more serious, but because we're talking about back then. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Rome 2002 Club Cruise is the first time that the Montreal Dragonboat Club women's team will race internationally. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so this is a very important moment in the development of Dragonboat for you personally and Montreal generally. So my question for you is, if I had a time machine, went back to 2002, kidnapped Smith, and introduced him to 2021 Smith, what is the thing that he's going to be most surprised about? And I'll help make this a little bit easier. I'll give you options. Would he be more surprised by the changes in the way you teach technique, or the changes in the way that you coach, like in your interpersonal skills?
He would probably be surprised that younger Smith, Coach Smith, was probably a lot more, I don't want to say aggressive, but he liked to yell a little bit more than modern day Coach Smith. Coming from a big family and playing a lot of rugby and football growing up, there was really only one way to coach a team, and that was to get after them and push them hard. So definitely mellowed a little bit over the years. There's no question about that. But back then, the big technique in the early 2000s was setting up your paddle really high and catching the water as hard as you could, which led to more than one shoulder issue, and dragging it as far back as you could. Those were the big technical things. So there's no question we've definitely evolved our technique quite a bit.
Indeed. And yet similarly, like I feel like with the more recent developments in adapting the Chinese style stroke, I feel like in a sense we're sort of circling back to this idea of like hitting the catch particularly hard. It's just that now we have a more refined view of how to accomplish this.
There's definitely a lot more experience in how you teach it. Back then it was go high and hit hard was the first thing you told a rookie off the street. And nowadays we spend a lot of time teaching them how to catch properly before you do anything remotely aggressive. Mm-hmm. So which many shoulders have been thankful for.
All right. Let's go on to the Menard twins. So in case it's not obvious to the people watching, you guys are identical twins, that means that you guys used to be a singular cell. And so with that in mind, I want to ask, let's start this. Have you guys figured out who's who?
Seamus, don't you have that photo in your room?
I did. I don't know. I think I moved it. Yeah, I think I
Oh,
moved
no.
it.
Are you talking about the underwear photo, or are you talking about the dress shirt photo? 'Cause this is like Tinder and LinkedIn in the same photo here.
Either or. I can just say that at least when this picture was posted on Facebook, you guys have not figured out who was who. So so my question now is, has this been updated, or we're still not sure?
I think we would have to bring in our mom, but she's not available at the moment. My guess is that I'm wearing blue and Seamus wearing red, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's the default option, but can't confirm. I don't remember.
But more seriously, because I mean, you guys have clearly heard all the twin jokes ever. I want to ask, let's say if I went and got Juice, the team that you guys have been most involved with, how do they differentiate you guys? Is there something visually that over time I would figure out, or is that basically impossible and you have to go more with personality? Well, how does Juice figure out who's Aiden and who is Seamus?
I think they don't know, and they just kind of play it off. I'd say half the team maybe can't tell the difference, and maybe if they look at our faces when we're not talking, like my resting mean face, for lack of a better term, gives me away as Aiden.
Okay, so Aiden's the meaner looking one.
I don't know if I would say that. I don't know. His resting face is a little more aggressive generally.
Okay. Okay. What about let's think of people who might have even more experience figuring out who is who. How do your parents tell who is who?
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes my mom gets it wrong still.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's from behind or something like that, then yeah.
I do have to ask the classic twin question, which is, have you guys ever tried to pass for the other? And if you did, why?
I think once we tried a couple times in like elementary school and it didn't work, but in high school we had marketing class. I had it in second period and Aiden had it in third period, and there's a test that day, and for some reason there's a TA, so I wrote the first test lunchtime, looked up the couple answers I didn't get, and went back and did the rest. But good thing this isn't recording, right?
No, this isn't recorded at all.
Yeah, it's just marketing.
All right. Let's go back to just a general question, and I'll start with Lindsay, because I have to apologize. I did not plan enough questions that were specific to you, so I want to start with you. What is the most memorable race that springs to mind, but specifically a local race? So you're not allowed to choose.
I can't pick Regina.
You can't pick nationals, okay, of any sorts, and you can't pick any kind of world championship, obviously. A memorable local race.
Oh my goodness. I think GWN probably when I came back from Worlds, just from Thailand, and we had GWN, and I had just landed the night before. And I think half of our team had just also landed like within the past few days. And so I was extremely jet lagged, and I slept between every race, and then had to wake up, put on a Cox box, yell, and then I passed right out. So I think that was a race where I don't remember, we won, and I was happy about that, but it was probably the most memorable race because I think I don't remember very much of it at all, because I had literally just stepped off a plane a few hours earlier. Yeah.
All right. Wendy?
Most memorable local race. I probably have a few, but one of the big ones was 2016, the Toronto Island Festival 500-meter mixed final. which was the first time that my team NDRC had ever won the A final for the Toronto Festival. And we put in 2 mixed teams, so NDRC green and NDRC yellow, and both teams were in the final, which is really nice. That's a really nice thing to have, like to have that depth in a crew that you can have 2 teams in the final. And NDRC green had won that race, which was obviously a great feeling, but there's also a really funny video of the race where our coach is actually in the NDRC yellow boat, the other boat, and he's looking over. He definitely looks at the other boats during the race. And when you see NDRC green pass the finish line and win, you see Gavin look in the other boat, stop paddling. His race isn't even finished yet, and he starts cheering. So, and then after the race, we're just all like really happy together and cheering for each other. And it's really nice to have that bond among the crew that we can be happy for each other's success, even if you weren't necessarily in the boat. We can support each other like that. And though I do recommend finishing your own race before cheering for anybody else's, for anybody else listening.
Yeah. Whenever in doubt, don't do whatever Gavin Maxwell, the former Olympian, does. Matt.
Most memorable local race?
Or at least the first one that comes to mind. And you don't need to speak about that time that you got so many penalties they didn't bother writing out each one individually.
Well, that was exactly the race I was going to talk about, because this was there was a time when the 2,000 meter races did not quite have the rules they have today, and at 22 Dragons at the Quebec Cup, we were one of the first, probably the first sport race out east anyway to really push the 2K, but we had no rules about right of way and so on and what you could do, for going around the turns. And it just so happened for this race that RDS, which is the French equivalent of TSN in Quebec, was coming to film. It was the first time, the only time actually, they came to film a Dragonboat event. So I was steering the boat. I was also the organizer of the race. And I tried going into a turn. We ended up with about 10 crews going at the same time. And there I was trying to coach people through the turn and officiate and steer all at the same time. And my mortality kicked in. And I ended up causing a cascade of collisions that resulted in the officials just throwing well over 1 or 2 minutes of penalties at me. And of course, it was all recorded and broadcast on television on multiple occasions.
This race is obviously a regularly cited inside joke at 22 Dragons. And for those of you who are not sure what we're talking about, if you look at this shared screen right now, these are the results, because obviously I had these already ready because I knew that this story was going to come up in this conversation. And you'll see that Verdun BBC Adrenaline, which used to be coached by Matt, and it has 3 asterisks. We're in 12th. And 3 asterisks is 60 seconds of penalty for multiple infractions. Just don't even bother with writing them all because it'll be too complicated. Finally, Aiden, Seamus, most memorable local race.
I'll start this time. Definitely for me, the 2014 Junior A final. That was our last year racing in the high school, the junior division. And we were going off against Leo, so the team from Pemberton up north in BC.
How often have you guys come in second to this team? Because I know the story, but I want to make sure that everybody else does.
I don't even know. I think Hamburg had come close maybe 3 or 4 times within like a second or so. And yeah, so that was over like 16 years. So they had won 16 years in a row. And this was our last year in high school. We wanted to beat them to end the streak. And we ended up, this was like one of our strongest years. in junior division, and we ended up losing by like 0.3 of a second, which at the time I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazingly close. But then, of course, later on, I had races that were like, yeah, like hundredths of a second. But still, felt amazing. But I started crying like 3 seconds before I crossed the finish line, just because there's so much emotion to it and so much pressure being built into that race.
Wow.
Yeah.
You might be the first person I'm aware of who has started crying before crossing the finish line. That just speaks to the amount of emotions that were part of this race.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure being put on Aiden and myself as well, like to be role models for the team.
Aiden, he's chosen already one race, which I assume you were also part of, and so I'm going to make it more difficult, and you're not allowed to choose the same race.
All right. Yeah, I wasn't planning to. You know, it's typical twin fashion. We have the same answer for a lot of things, so we're good at this. Come up with a different answer. I guess our last race with One West in 2017, we decided we were the captains that year, and as a team, we voted and we were going to disband the team. And then going into that race, we knew it was the last race ever for the team. So it was also a lot of emotion, a lot of memory attached to that one. And we had a lot of support come out from the community, people who used to paddle with the team. People who, all the coaches for all the other teams around all were from One West as well. So coming out and having that support and watching the team's last hurrah was a big moment for us and in the community.
Awesome. That is a really good story. So well chosen. We're going to stick with the twins now. And this is, as far as I'm aware, the only important Dragonboat event to happen with the twins separately. So the lone twin, Seamus going to Kunming for the World Championships in 2017, and without Aiden. So I need to ask, because I don't believe I know the answer. So I'll start with Aiden. What did you try out for the team, or you chose not to? And if not, why?
I started out trying out for it, and then I guess I got an injury and got a new relationship and changed the school and kind of dropped off the map. So I started out the process and then I stopped partway.
All right. And Seamus, what do you remember? What do you remember about racing a big Dragonboat race without your usual partner?
Well, I guess we spent a lot of time together, but it wasn't that weird. I was still in a Dragonboat and, felt like home. But I do remember the after party, which I will not reference, but I'll never forget that.
If anybody wants to know, you'll have to ask him yourself. All right. Mike, we were talking about your gray hair, right? And one of your most distinctive features, besides your obvious charm.
Thank you.
So my question is going to be, when did the gray hair start? Because in my research, I believe that you were on Facebook starting in 2007. I got to know you in 2009, and you already had gray hair. And this is a picture from your prom, which is an excellent example of late 2000s prom fashion. And it appears like you're already graying here. So yeah, when did it start? And
about 2002 when I was in grade 8.
Okay. Okay.
I remember getting my first few gray hairs right around the middle to late of grade 8, and so I just kept going from there.
And I have to ask, have you ever felt that it's been a perk?
When I was under 19, it was.
I don't know what you're referring to.
Yeah, we'll just leave it there. Now it's just something that I've kind of stuck with. I figure now if I just show up somewhere with jet black hair, everyone will think I'm going through a midlife crisis. So I'm kind of just stuck with it.
Do you feel that you're stuck with it, but have you come to accept it, or we're still fighting it?
No, I've come to accept it probably 10 years ago.
All right. Now, let's continue on. My next question is going to be for Wendy. And Wendy, this is going to be your first premier drumming experience for the national team. This is 2015 in Welland. So I'm going to ask you about a specific story. What do you remember about the 2K and the subsequent 1Ks?
Oh, the 2K. So at the World Nations Championships, the first distance that they do is the 2K, and it's seeded based off, I believe, the previous competition's results. And the Canadian women were definitely the favorites going into that race. And I believe the result was we got second by a second to the Americans. And then that was also my first premier race with the women. And coming off of that race, they felt good. I remember that we felt it was pushed hard and that it was a good race. And Matt had told us the result that we were second, and that was a big disappointment. The Americans had raced really well, and I think that was a big driving factor for the rest of the competition, where we're like, you know what, that happened once, okay, we can learn from that. We're not letting that happen again. And then for each of the 1Ks afterward, it was just such a big motivating factor to, you know, we can't mess up like that again. And the 1Ks were kind of adjustments from what I remember. Like the first one was maybe too hard, but then the second one we're like, oh, well, let's try to adjust. But then we adjusted a bit too much, and we're like, well, that's a bit too easy. And then the third one was dominating. And that was, I believe, an accumulation of the 3 rounds. And which I think we had still won all 3, but one of the key points was to also have a good race and to make sure that we had a dominant performance to kind of like cement our place and be like, this is where we belong.
I'll let you leave the story at that, but I do need to say that in our personal communications, I do believe you had some angrier words that went through your that you had chosen to describe the way the team was feeling going into those 1Ks. But like I said, I'll leave it at that, and that is a wonderful description of how things had transpired. We're gonna finish this off with Matt. So you've been involved in the sports in basically every role and level that can exist, as exemplified by the fact that you've been named to the Hall of Fame in 2019. I remember you had mentioned one quick story to me, and I'd like you to expand on it. Who told you that if you treat the sport well, the sport will treat you well? And how did that phrase impact you?
So that's a great quote, Mike. That quote has probably defined my whole career in dragon boating. And when Matt, Robert, and I first got involved and started 22 Dragons, we were actually, sorry, this is before we'd started, or around the same time, I can't remember. Anyway, the Montreal Festival, which was being run by the local Chinese Restaurant Association, wasn't doing so well. And they had asked a marketing kind of promoter guru to come in and help them out. And the first thing he told them was, you guys need to work with guys who know the sport and like the sport. And he called us into his office, and we sat down and had a good talk, and he wanted to know what our ideas were for making the festival better. And we told him that, and it was in that conversation, he said, it's so simple. He said, I see 2 guys here who really know what they're doing and care about it, and are going to have a lot of success. And the advice he just said was, serve the sport and the sport will serve you. And we walked out of there, and we've lived with that advice ever since, and really feel that the more we give to the club, the more we give to Dragonboat Canada, it just all ends up coming back to us at some point, and in goodwill. And that would be my advice for anyone else who's working in the sport well as well.
Well, I can't think of a better place to end this conversation. There doesn't seem to be any questions from the crowd coming in. So thank you to all of our program directors for giving us your time and telling us your stories. Quick shout out to Calvin Cheng for helping me with designing the PowerPoint. And thank you to all of our viewers for joining in. Have a great weekend, and we hope to see each other very soon on the water. This was The Sniper Show with Michael Wu signing off.